Chapter 3, Mishnah 10. We learned in Mishnah 8 that when a fig tree grows in a courtyard, the owner cannot combine two figs and eat them as a snack. This Mishnah discusses the Maasros rule for a tree that is partially inside the courtyard and partially outside of it. In connection with this, the Mishnah then discusses the rule for such a tree in regard to other Torah laws. We now turn to the words of the Mishnah. If a fig tree stands inside a courtyard and one of its branches leans over onto a garden outside the courtyard, he may stand in the garden and eat the figs growing over it in his usual manner, i.e., even 2 or more figs at a time. And he is not obligated to separate Maasros before eating them as a snack. Since these figs did not enter the courtyard, they did not become subject to Maasros when he picked them. If the tree stands in the garden and leans over into the courtyard so that some of its figs hang over the courtyard, he may pick those figs and eat them one at a time without being obligated to separate Maasros from them. But if he combined 2 or more figs, he is obligated to separate Maasros before eating them as a snack. Since these figs are in the courtyard, they become subject to Maasros as soon as they are picked and combined. The Mishnah discusses other laws that apply to a tree that stands in one area and leans into another area. The first case involves a tree that is partially in Eretz Yisrael, where fruit is subject to Maasros, and partially outside Eretz Yisrael, where the laws of Maasros do not apply. If a tree stands inside the land of Israel and one of its branches leans, i.e. extends outside the land of Israel, or if it stands outside the land and one of its branches leans inside the land, everything goes by the location of the tree's trunk. If the tree's trunk is inside the land, all of its fruit is considered to have grown in the land of Israel. And if the tree's trunk is outside the land, all of its fruit is considered to have grown outside. Since the tree's nourishment is drawn from the ground by its trunk, the entire tree is considered to be located where the trunk is. The next law is about houses inside a walled city in the land of Israel. The Torah teaches that when a house inside a walled city is sold, the seller has the right to buy it back for a period of 1 year after the sale. Once that year passes, he can no longer force the buyer to sell it back to him. A tree inside a walled city is subject to the same rule. The Mishnah now teaches the law for a tree that is partially inside a walled city and partially outside of it. And similarly, with regard to the law of houses in walled cities, everything goes by the location of the tree's trunk. If the tree's trunk is within the city's walls, the entire tree is considered to be within the walled city, and even the branches hanging outside can only be bought back for the first year. If the tree's trunk is outside the city's walls, the entire tree is considered to be outside the walled city, and even the branches hanging inside may be bought back at any time. Since the entire tree is nourished through the trunk, all of it is considered to be whatever the trunk is. The next section of the Mishnah deals with the law of an Erev Miklat, a city of refuge. The Torah states that someone who unintentionally kills another person goes into exile in an Erev Miklat, where he is protected from the revenge of the victim's relatives. However, if he steps out of the city, the relatives may kill him. In regard to this law, an area of 2,000 amos around the city is considered part of the city. The Mishnah teaches the law for a tree that is partially within 2,000 amos of the city and partially outside of it. And with regard to Erev Miklat, everything goes by the location of the branches as well. If either the tree's trunk or its branches are within 2,000 amos of the Erev Miklat, the entire tree is treated as if it is within that area. Thus, it is forbidden for the victim's relative to attack the killer if he is under any part of the tree that is partially within 2,000 amos of the Erev Miklat. The Mishnah's final ruling is about the law of Maaser Sheni, second tithe. Maaser Sheni must be taken to Jerusalem and eaten there. If this is difficult, it may instead be redeemed for money. The money is then taken to Jerusalem, where it is spent on food that is eaten there. Maaser Sheni may not be eaten outside of Jerusalem, and it may not be redeemed for money inside Jerusalem. Thus, classifying an area as being inside Jerusalem or outside of it leads to both a stringency and a leniency. If it's inside Jerusalem, he may eat his Maaser Sheni there, but he may no longer redeem it. If it is outside Jerusalem, he may not eat his Maaser Sheni there, but he may still redeem it. The Mishnah now discusses the status of a tree that is partly in Jerusalem and partly outside of it. And similarly, with regard to Jerusalem and Maaser Sheni, everything goes by the location of the branches as well. If part of the tree is inside the city and part of it is outside, we treat the entire tree according to the stricter position. Maaser Sheni may not be eaten as either part of the tree, as if it is all outside the city, nor may it be redeemed as either part, as if it is all inside the city. It makes no difference which part of the tree was inside the city and which part was outside.